Welcome to TTalk, where athletes get to tell their stories in their own words. Today on TTalk, I'm so excited to have our quarterback slash wide receiver from the late 80s, Jerome McIntosh. Jerome started off as a quarterback, was successful in that position, but he went on to switch over to wide receiver, where he had even a greater impact on the Tulane football team. He set some records. He wound up playing with the Saints, and he's just had an incredible career and an incredible life. So we're excited to have Jerome on. So, how are you doing today, Jerome?
I'm doing well. I probably need you to come with me anytime there's an introduction need to be said of me. That was very good.
So, we're just going to get right into it. And I just want to know, what was it like growing up, Jerome?
Well, most people know I am a military kid, so
Okay.
it was every 4 years you're gonna move, and so
What were some of the
uh,
places you lived that you remember?
that I remember. Well, I was born in Idaho. In
Okay.
Idaho, yes, and I stayed there probably long enough until this baby could fly, and then we moved to Germany.
Okay.
Stayed
What
there
what
four
part of
years.
Germany? Do you remember
Um,
Germany?
we were in on Hahn Air Force Base.
Okay.
And most people don't even know where that is. And I can't recall now either.
What do you remember
So
what it looked like? Do you
snow,
remember anything about being there?
snow
Okay.
I think I went up to second grade there and I just
Okay.
remember snow. So,
Gotcha.
and then from there we make a drastic change and we move to California,
Okay.
Edwards Air Force Base.
Okay.
So we are right outside Bakersfield and, you know, I'm a kid, so I don't know any of the California stuff that's going on. 4 more years, we moved to Florida to Eglin Air Force Base, which is the largest Air Force base in the nation. So we're there, and you're learning discipline. You're learning how to cope with change and adversity because all your friends are back in California, and now you're here in Florida. Who do you know? Well, you got to get to know them because what one thing that the military will do, they'll put you next to somebody living wise and they don't care if you like them. They don't care if you get along. That's where you're going to stay for 4 years. So it's in your best interest to get along with people and to, you know, make some bridges and help people along the way.
So, what are some of your early family memories or traditions? I know you guys were moving around a lot, but what type of things kind of grounded you from a family perspective?
I think as a family, we always went to like the Blue Angels, the Thunderbirds. We always were active on base. So, you could go to the air shows and you were around, 747s, and it wasn't like an awestruck thing. It was just what military kids did. I could tell you as I got out of Tulane, this is jumping ahead, but the school I used to teach at was right outside the Air Force Base. And at 5 o'clock, everything stopped to present the colors and to, end that day. And so a lot of people that weren't around that didn't know are saying, well, why are you stopping the baseball or the softball game? And our kids knew, and they'd
Right.
stop, and their hands were on their heart, and they would go through it, and everybody else would kind of look like, are these people just crazy? Is it just because they're close to the base? And that was just a ritual that you just knew. And going forward, you were going to do, regardless of where you were. It just, once you heard revelry, you knew it was time to stop and address the flag.
So, it was kind of patriotic growing up in your household.
Definitely so. Yes, yes. And like I said, just you will have some discipline, and you're going to be around other kids that are military kids. So when you stay on base, that's all you know is military life. There's everything that you need that you may go off base to try to find. Everything is on base for you. So you've got military people, you've got the military police there, you've got the commissary, the BX, everything that you needed was right there. So why, I feel like I was a little bit sheltered, although I moved a lot, but I was sheltered because I was always on a base and everything was at my beck and call on base.
So, as you're in school, at what point did you start dipping into sports?
I started playing sports I think I would say pretty early in life. I know when I got to California, we started playing the rec league sports. And for me, it was football and basketball. We played those. And then it was the move to Florida, where at that time, it was a junior high school. So I'm out at junior high school football and I'm playing wide receiver. And I'm thinking, I think I'm pretty good at this. It's okay. Um, the story that happens is we call the play. I'm on one side and I'm thinking, okay, well, the ball's supposed to go on the other side. So I'm not really going to run this route as hard as I can. And unbeknownst to me, quarterback throws it. I'm not even looking. It hits me in the back of the head. I can't be a wide receiver anymore because that right
What?
there,
That was the end?
that was the end. Not my doing, but our coach was like, if you can't pay attention enough to watch where the ball is going to be thrown, you can't be out here. So I took a little bit of a regression there, and for whatever reason,
How did it make you feel hearing that
oh
from the
oh,
coach?
I was tore up. I mean, I had people laughing at me and coaches yelling at me, and because as you live on the base, all the people that are on that team are with you on the base, and so they got jokes all day long, and so it just got to a point where it's like I got to do something to redeem myself, and we didn't have a backup quarterback, so I said, well, can I try that? And back in those days, you might have thrown the ball 5 or 6 times a game. That was it. You were going to run the ball until somebody stopped you. And so we just ran the ball, and I was just a facilitator to get it to our running backs.
Gotcha. So you're in middle school, things are moving along. What was it like playing basketball for you? How
Now,
good were you in basketball?
well, for basketball, I thought I was better in basketball than I was in football.
Okay.
And I think my eighth grade year, I had numbers to prove, averaging probably 30 a game.
Wow.
And we were winning, and when you're winning, things seem to come a little bit easier. And so um, I went up to the high school, and once I got to the high school, we ran into a coach that kind of said, we want you to pass the ball at least 6 times before you even look to shoot it, unless you have a layup. If we're in our offense, that ball has got to rotate at least 6 times before we look to shoot. So that kind of cramped my style and the style of the guys that would play with us. And so we weren't very good in high school. I'll tell you that.
So did you play any other sports or was it just football and basketball in high
It
school?
was just those two sports, and that took enough time for me to kind of stay on the grades and prepare for football or basketball when it's not in season.
And what kind of student were you? Like, did you put a lot into schoolwork? Like, what were you thinking of as a student?
I think I was probably that kid, and I can say this because I'm a high school teacher right now. So I was one of those kids that I'm going to probably do the bare minimum to get by. If my mom says you need a B in this class, I'm probably going to get the low B, but I got the B. It wasn't ever a thought of I'm going to fail something. I wasn't that bad of a student, and the discipline at home made it such that yeah, you're going to pass, and that's not even up for debate. We're not going to have parent conferences. You are going to take care of what you need to, or we're going to start taking things away from you. And the first thing would be you're not going to get to play sports.
Okay.
You will have
So
enough time to do your studies.
you were passionate about playing sports at that time.
That was my motivation. I wanted to play sports, and the byproduct was, well, you better have good grades to do that. And so, I did what I needed to do academically to stay eligible, and not so much eligible, but it was more, you're going to be the AB honor roll. If it's a higher level class, you can get a C, but we're not dealing with the D's or F's. That's not happening.
Okay. So as you're playing, you start receiving accolades. What are some of the awards you got in high school between football and basketball?
High school awards, I played quarterback from my 10th grade, and back then you had your junior high school, so it was 7, 8, 9, and then you had your high school, it was 10 through 12. So I didn't have a freshman year of high school. It was just I was at the junior high school at that point. So my high school career, let's see, I went I was the two-time 4A state quarterback, player of the year, basketball wise. Like I said, high school basketball, we weren't very good, so weren't many accolades to be spread out. We just kind of, we were probably maybe a 500 team, but the athletes that we had were way better than the 500. We just did not gel or have the direction to be better than what we were.
Okay. So, you're playing football in high school. At what point did you go, I think I can go to the next level with this?
I had some guys early in my career that were like, as I was a sophomore, we had a guy who went to the University of Florida to play. We had a guy to go, Ricky Thomas went to the University of Alabama to play. And, I'm a little ashamed, but when I was in high school, college football wasn't my like desire. I just saw that they went. And in my junior year, we had another guy, a running back, David Castile, goes to the University of Alabama. And so I'm going, well, geez, these guys can get to college. And, back that time, we didn't have any cell phones. We didn't have anything like that. So if I were trying to reach out to somebody to get some information, that was pen to paper. And you had to wait and they had to get there and read it and do the same thing back to you. So I was kind of sheltered in the whole recruiting phase because I just didn't know. I didn't know like what school I wanted to go to. I knew one thing, and I carry that through with the kids that I coach now, and that is you got two options. You can go to a school that is a big school in a small town, like the University of Florida, Alabama, even I would put LSU in there. There's a big major presence of LSU fans in Baton Rouge. But if you're not on campus, you still know about LSU. So you can either have that or you can be at a small school in a big city. And that's the road that I took going to Tulane because, I came to Tulane and it was, wow, this is not the military base that I've always been on. This is more active and there are more things to do. And I gravitated to that. So,
So, how did Tulane get on your radar? What was that recruiting process like?
it's strange because I've listened to a few of the podcasts and it was Mac Brown. Mac Brown was recruiting me to go to Oklahoma. He was their offensive coordinator there before he came to Tulane. And, I think he was very straightforward with me and forthright. And he says, well, I'm going to interview in New Orleans at this school, and I'm asking for way too much. But you just never know. If you don't ask, they won't ever give it to you. So he asked for it, and probably the week after, he says, hey, now I'm at Tulane University, and I want you to come here. It's a lot closer to Florida than Oklahoma is. So that's the recruiting process for him. He came and got me, and he had Daryl Moody on the staff, who was a character in himself, and so that recruiting process started that way.
And so, what were they telling you that made you want to choose Tulane?
It was one in such that back then I didn't want to go to, as they call them, the football schools. I wanted to go to an academic place, not because I was the smartest, by no means. I just thought I am more than just a football player. So in my recruiting, I look back and I had Bobby Bowden at Florida State. He comes over to the house because we're about 2.5 hours away from Tallahassee. So he comes to the house and beautiful presentation. He's like, we got a jersey for you. We have got a position for you. You just have to play wide receiver. And me, as a 17-year-old high school kid full of testosterone, thinking he knows everything, says, I appreciate that, but I have never played wide receiver aside from getting hit in the back of the head. So I'm not going to do that. I think I am a quarterback by trade, and that's what I wanted to be. And so I go to Tulane. He's still in Tallahassee, and we played them every year. And so, I had great or good conversations with him after our games, and he would still remind me, you could have been with us, and you could have been doing that at Florida State. So, you know.
So, what were some of those conversations with Bobby Bowden like?
Well, his sales pitch was always, we are family and we are going to take care of each other and we are going to get some people from the Pensacola area. So you will have areas and with people to come back with, to drive home with, to go forward with. And, they are and he ran a very nice and tight ship. And it wasn't I appreciated him so much because he says, we've got quarterbacks. We want you to move somewhere else. And that is when, the Ward guy who won the Heisman played with the Knicks, played basketball and
Charlie
football.
Ward.
Charlie
Charlie
Ward,
Ward.
yes. So that's around Charlie Ward's time, I remember. And yeah, he played and he played well. And, I think I was the ultimate competitor where I wasn't going to say, that guy's better than me. I'm going to fight and try and do whatever I can to get on the field. And that kind of showed at Tulane.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you first got on campus, what were your impressions?
Well, I got there in the summer. So all the freshmen got there and we had practice. And, it was one of those things where I'll never forget my freshman year, Larry Rout. So Larry Rout is out there and, I'm around. And they got some bigger guys out here, but I'm going to compete. I saw him cramp. He cramped up and they stripped him down to his jockstrap right on the field and just poured container of ice on top of him to get his body temperature down. And I thought, I don't know if I could do this. That's a big guy, and he looks strong, and he is just suffering over there. Um, Once we got through that, it was just football 24/7. That's all you were doing because we were the only ones on campus. And so there is one glorious day where the rest of the freshmen show up and we're now sharing our campus with all these people. And it's like, wow, finally we get to see other people aside from these football guys. So my experience there was I was just ready to see other people. And we finally did. And, freshman year, geez, it was a definite departure from being at home. I will say that.
So you come into Tulane, you want to play quarterback. Mac Brown is there.
Hmm.
You had to come up against one of the more celebrated athletes in Terrence Jones. So what
Hmm.
was that whole process like? Taking the field with Terrence, competing with Terrence. What was your thought process like?
Yeah, so Terrence and I both came in together. There was a guy, Ken Karcher, that was there before us. And so we both came in, and Mac Brown was going to change the offense up. We were going to have more of a option style, roll out, sprint out kind of game. And so, I saw Terrence, and I'm like, geez, this guy's big. I don't know if he's the quarterback. And then, you start watching him play, and Terrence had a phenomenal arm. He could put balls where only he could do it. And so my thought was, well, I'm going to learn the playbook better than him. And fortunately for me, we ran basically the same offense in high school as we were going to at Tulane. And so Terrence struggled a bit with that. We were doing a read option, and so making reads and making the pull and pitching the ball to the running backs. He struggled with that a bit, but he had enough athletic ability to, if I make a mistake, I can correct that mistake by my physical talent. So, yeah, he was definitely a good guy. We ended up being friends and are still friends today. Harbored no ill will toward him. He was a Louisiana guy, so I knew at that point that people came to see him aside from this Florida guy from a small town called Niceville, Florida. They would much rather see their guy from Lutcher, who is, very good and very talented. And so he ended up playing his first year, and I got redshirted.
Okay.
So we had three quarterbacks on the staff, and I was the third one. So as a redshirt, back then, you didn't get to play. But I had to go because we always took three quarterbacks. So I went to all our away games and I dressed and I warmed up the whole thing, but I never got to play because either Ken or Terrence was playing, which was good for me. I thought the development of that year very, very much helped me.
Yes, definitely. So you go into your not your true freshman year, but the following year
Hmm.
where you actually get to play your first year eligibility.
Yes.
And Carter is gone, so
Hmm.
it's Terrence and it's you.
Yes.
So, as I recall, it seemed like you and Terrence were sharing quarterback duties during the season. So what was that decision like? How did they come to that decision, and how did that come about?
Okay, so as Terrence played his freshman year, Terrence was our running back. He played a little bit of quarterback, but he was primarily our running back, and his talents had already been shown. And so I think, yeah, we shared, but it was more like, I'd say 70-30, him to me. So I did get out there, and I'm going against their first team. And, we both, Terrence and I, are playing together and trying to, develop an offense that was high powered and was formidable for any defense to try to defend. You get out there and you're just trying your best. You look at guys and it's like, I know I'm not the starter, but there is no fall off here. I am going to compete and I'm going to play as hard as I can.
Yeah, I just from what I recall, and you can kind of correct me, it seemed like when Terrence, he was not gonna stand in the pocket. If the pocket started collapsing, Terrence was gone.
Uh huh.
He was taken off. And then it seemed like when you were in the pocket, you would just stand in and just release the ball, take the lick. Like I was like, he keeps getting hit. Why is he's? But you would literally stand in there for a longer period of time than Terrence, and you could see. And you were left-handed.
Yes.
Terrence was right-handed, so there was some stuff that the defense had to prepare for
Hmm.
with you and Terrence both playing at the same time. So was that something that Mac had in mind, or did it just develop?
I think that just developed. Terrence was always a right-handed kid, and I was always a left-handed guy. And by the time it got time for me to get out there and, as you say, sit in the pocket, I'm trying to go through my reads as quickly as possible. And so I think, as any quarterback, I would rather kind of take the hit than to throw an interception. I'm trying to make sure our guys are open. Sometimes you got to throw it early to throw them open. And so standing in the pocket, I thought was something that you needed to do. There was times where you needed to scramble if, the blocking broke down quickly, but I tried to give the offensive line time to set their blocks and all of that. So if you have a stationary pocket where people are moving around, linemen have zero clue because their back is to the quarterback. They have zero clue where you are. So if you stayed right where you are, they knew if I make this kind of U-shaped umbrella around him, he will be safe, and they would complete their blocks. And so that's what I tried to do. It didn't always happen that way. I definitely had to run sometimes.
Definitely. So how did you feel about your freshman year playing, the overall experience?
I liked we had our spring game like 2 weeks before we were going to play Louisville, our first game that year, and I went back to throw the ball. I threw it, and my pinky, on my throwing hand, caught a helmet, and so I pulled like 5 ligaments in my finger. And I'm the backup quarterback, and so I've got it. I had surgery the next day, and I got that fixed. But now I've got my fingers all taped together. And as a quarterback, you want full range of your hand, and
Right.
so my fingers are taped together, and we go to Louisville, and probably late in the fourth, we're maybe down three, and Terrence gets hurt. And so I got to go out there with this hurt finger already. And so I get out there, and I think the first play, I get ready to fall. I put my hand down to brace my fall, and someone steps on the finger that still has the stitches in it.
Oh
So now my
wow.
finger is bleeding. I've gotten hit in the face, so my mouth is bleeding. And we've got, I remember Maurice Nelson, he came into the game and he's looking at me like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I'm like, I need to play. What's the play? What's the play? And, we get out there and we were all young, very, very young, like,
Right.
freshmen out there playing. And so it was a strange time. But in fact, the Louisville game, it came down to a field goal, which I think we missed the field goal and lost by like two. But just the competitive nature of the game, it was very fun. And it was like, I can play at this level. I can. I know I can do this. So that was eye-opening for me.
Gotcha. So a little adversity kind of pushed you over that limit at that point.
Oh, without a doubt, because I knew we didn't have anybody else in terms of being a quarterback. We had a guy from Georgia, Clay McCall, and Clay was our long snapper and our punt snapper and extra point snapper, and he was our third team quarterback. And he's like, you can't get hurt. I'm not ready yet. And so, there wasn't much pressure from that, but I just wanted to make sure I want to show everybody I can play at this level. And as good as Terrence is, I can match that.
Cool. So what was your reception like on campus outside of the football field? So on campus, in the classrooms, how did you navigate that as you came in your true freshman year?
Okay, so our freshman year, like I said, once everybody started coming on campus, and then you got your schedule, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be good. We got classes now, so we get to class, and I can distinctly remember a professor say, all the football players stay after class. I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna get something good, You guys don't have to do this. And he's like, no, this is what I want you to understand. We are an academic institution. I don't care about football. I know you play on Friday, but if we have an assignment that's due on Friday, you better have it here on Thursday. I'm not taking it Monday when you come back. You will not get any kind of concessions or anything that you think or you've heard of about college football guys not going to class and all that. If you don't go to class, you're not going to pass. And that was just day one. And so I remember, kind of slacking off and whatnot. And it's like, so you would see like students that would look and say, "Oh, that's the football guys," and they would kind of move to the other side. It's like I don't have a plague or anything. You don't have to move. And so at that point, just because of my competitive nature, I started thinking I'm going to show them. So that's when you go from the mid in the seating, sitting up front. I'm
Right.
showing this teacher that I am interested in this class, and I am going to, we always had study hall, so you were going to go to study hall, and then those grades started to come up, and you start making better grades on tests, and you feel a little bit good about it, so you start holding that paper up, so the people behind you could see, oh, he got a 98. How did he do that? Oh, well, we have a study session in the library. If you ever want to come, you just let me know. Just kind of breaking the ice and letting kids know, because a lot of the kids went to private high school.
Right.
And so they're coming from other parts of the country and they get to Tulane, which is a private university. And so the parents feel like they're going to get that same quality education. And they do, except there are people that look like you and I that are at that school that are doing and pursuing the same goals and dreams that they have. They just hadn't been used to that. So it was I guess a change for some. For me, it really wasn't. It's just, you're going in there to learn and not to be cutting up playing with people. So you go ahead and get your books done, and football took care of itself.
Did you feel like you had any advocates in the athletic department that would kind of, check on you, make sure that you were going down the proper path?
The two that we had, Dr. Tom Hill, of course, he was there, and Phil Hughes. Both of those guys were our advocates to any kind of teaching or any kind of, if you needed a tutor, anything like that, they were on it. And can't knock them. I know in my situation, I still got to a point where I was going to be academically ineligible. So I'm not going home. That's not an option. They're like, well, if you don't get these grades up, we're going to rescind your scholarship and you got to go somewhere. Well, I'm not going back home, not to face the wrath of my parents. So I took it upon myself. I stayed that summer and took summer classes, and I stayed in New Orleans the rest of my time in the summers. So I ended up getting back eligible, and in the end, I ended up graduating with two separate bachelor's degrees, which, as Dr. Hill says, I think you're the first person who's ever done that. Not to get a dual degree, but to get two separate bachelor's degrees. I said, well, I've been going to school a long time, and there hadn't been a change. It's, during the summer, I'm doing a full load because yeah, that's just what I knew I had to do to stay on top of things.
Excellent. And what did that relationship continue with Dr. Hill and Dr. Hughes? How did that relationship progress?
Those guys were, you know, Dr. Hill was a former Olympic champion, and so he knew. And so when you had that bad day, when you needed to just go talk, it wasn't about football. It was just about life and how am I coping and how do you do this if these people don't want to coexist with me? How do I still manage that? And so those guys were definitely influences in shaping how I felt at school and just being in New Orleans itself. I came to Coach Brown one day. We had a day off, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, small town kid from a military school, I'm going to go ahead and go downtown. I go downtown. I'm on Canal Street, and there's a black RX-7 pulls up next to me, and I had just gone to Popeyes, so I got my box of chicken, and the RX-7 pulls up, and the tinted windows, completely black. And the window goes down and a gun comes out facing me. And I'm going, oh, what am I supposed to do? I'm just stuck. And they pulled the arm back in the car. The window went up and they drove off. And
Wow.
I was like, Coach, I can't be here. If
So
that
were
is
you
what
down, did you go down on Canal Street by yourself?
Yes, I did. Because I didn't know any better. That was the thing. I didn't know that we were going to go as a group or football players were going to all gang together and go. I was just solo by myself looking around going, okay, this is good. This is good. And then this gun is pulled on me and I'm thinking, no, I got to get out of here. Went to talk to Tom Hill and he was the one that kind of took me off the ledge and said, now that's an isolated incident. You probably will never see that again, but make sure if you do go downtown, you got to go with people. It's got to be a group of people because solos, they can get picked off. But if it's a group, nobody's really going to mess with the group. So a lesson learned in that case.
So you were considering getting out of Dodge at that point?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Called mom and everything. Hey, academically I'm okay, but this city has got too much for me. And I just wanted, because I had never been in a major city by myself. It's always been with the family. So I got my dad who was 6'6". I've got family. And so they're not gonna bother the family. But the solo guy, yeah, you can get picked off. And so it was just a lesson that I needed to learn. And from that point forward, never went downtown by myself. If I did find myself alone, I was vigilant about who's around me, what's going on, how are my surroundings. It's basically just growing up. So now when I return back to New Orleans, I have no problem. I am as comfortable as I've ever been in New Orleans.
Yes, indeed. So who were some of the friends that you gathered after that incident?
Well, I had a guy who, my freshman year, roommate was Preston Washington. He was from Pensacola, Florida. And little P Dub, he was a little shorter than me, but he was ultra competitive, and there was always going to be a challenge. If it was who leaves Sharp Hall to get to the bathroom first, it was always going to be a challenge with him, and I fell into that, and I appreciated that. We had Lonnie Marks, who was from there, Melvin Ferdinand, he was from there also. He came a little later. But we had some guys that, would take care of you. We had older guys that definitely would look out for the freshmen and just kind of brought you into the Tulane football family.
Excellent. So then you go into your next year. Is that when you started thinking about, well, how did the thought come about you moving from quarterback to receiver?
That thought was easy, but to bench. I was tired of sitting on the bench, and I was like, I know I could play at this level, but at that point, it was the campaign of Louisiana Jones, and so they're pushing him to be a Heisman candidate, and it's like I watch enough football and know enough that the backup quarterback to the Heisman guy is not gonna dethrone him. So I thought I've got to find a way to get on the field. And we had Mark Zeno at X, and I thought, well, he's an All-American. I'm probably not going to beat him out. But on our backside, I thought, I could probably do that that's over there. We had some guys that were young and inconsistent, and I thought, well, I can play that. Not
So
never knowing that I never caught a ball. I've never played receiver before.
was that Bobby Bowden in your head, or was that just like how did that thought come
That,
about?
his words echoed once I became that receiver. But the first time I was out there, I was just like, okay, I've thrown to enough receivers. I know that if I've got to block, I'm blocking somebody my size. I'm not going in there and trying to block the Fred Davises of the world. I'm just not. I'm too small. I'm not going to do that. So, and I wasn't required to do that. So I felt good about making the transition. And a lot of times people thought, well, how are you going to be able to do that if you don't? Well, as a quarterback, you are supposed to know all the routes and where
Right.
everybody is. So that made it very easy for me. I knew where the receiver was supposed to be. It was just a matter of getting to that spot. And so it made it easier for me, I think, if you're transferring from one position, like if you were a running back trying to be a wide receiver and you knew exactly what running backs do, but you didn't know what the receivers did, that would make it a little bit harder. But I thought with me, I was supposed to know what they did anyway. So I knew the route tree and I knew where the ball was supposed to be going. So it made it easier for me.
So did the transition happen during the season or was it during the spring? And who did you bring the idea to?
It was during the season and it wasn't even so much my idea. I got tired of being on the bench. And, I think anybody that's a competitor, I want to go out and play. I want to be out there. I don't want to sit and watch people do it. I want to do it myself. So I think our wide receiver coach, Tim Nunez, and I spoke about it. And he says, well, if you really think that you can come out here and be a wide receiver, oh, we'd welcome you. I said, well, I got to talk to the head coach and all, and we'll see. But let's try to plan on that because I think the coaching staff saw talent in me. I think they knew that I could do things, but I wasn't gonna outseed Terrence. So I had to go somewhere else, and luckily I went to a spot where I could add value immediately.
Okay. So you go, but you don't have to deal with Zeno, who is the All American on the other side.
Uh huh.
You go on to dealing with the more inconsistent people. How long from the time you made that decision, started practicing, did you actually get on the field and start catching balls?
I want to say it probably took a week of practice, and that was about because I said I knew all the plays, so it wasn't as if a learning curve had to happen with me in the plays, and I knew the routes. It was just going from taking the ball from under center to being out in a stance and making sure if the defensive back rolls up on you, you got to protect yourself. That's a fight right there. It's just a fight. It's not a technique kind of thing. You need to get to a spot, and he's probably trying to stop you from getting there. So once you got that in your head and blocking, that's always been, something that if you're going to play wide receiver at any level, you got to block. And most people think, no, that's counterintuitive. You got to be able to catch the ball. Well, we're not going to throw it to you if you can't block for other people. So that became a challenge for me, blocking. But it's one of those things. It's just you and him. You're not going to have to block five guys on one play. You just block one and do that very well, and you'll be fine. And it's not a 10-second block. It's short, sustained contact with the person, and generally you'll have a running back. And we had several. Marvin Allen was one of my roommates, and Michael Pierce was one of my roommates. They're going to make a cut. Chance Miller, smaller guy, he's going to make a cut off of your block. So if you just maintain contact, they will find the way.
Gotcha. And did you get any help from the receivers to help kind of bring you along? How did that work out?
Well, I'll say, and I know Mark Zeno. And so Mark was one, it was a quiet confidence, and he would share that with you, but it wasn't like you got to do this or he was just like, you got this. Just do what you do. And so with that, you're thinking, what is it that I do out here? And so, and I think that's when Melvin Ferdinand was there and James Toney had come in. Maurice Nelson had already played there. And I just thought, yeah, we've got some guys out here, but for whatever reason, I think I'm best. I'm the best one. And that kind of confidence, while I was at Tulane, I kind of had that. And as I look back afterward, I thought, geez, I was probably a mean guy to a lot of people at Tulane just because of my mouth, because I was so confident in what I could do. And, I wouldn't shoot anybody down, but I'm saying, yeah, now that Zeno's gone, these balls are coming to me because I'm going to catch them. I'm going to be the man. That was just my mentality.
Great. And I mean, it paid off. I
It
mean, you
has.
you wound up playing really well, being at first on the other side of Z, and
hmm
then after he left, you became that primary receiver. Who was your quarterback? What was that like as you guys developed?
I had a year with Terrence. He was still there, and I tried to replicate some of the things that Zeno did. I ended up leading the team in yards and touchdowns and in catches that year. I think Zeno had like 70 something. I had 55, so I was in the ballpark. First year playing it, and so the next year I had Duron Smith. He had come in and he was backing up Terrence for a while. And once Terrence went to the Canadian Football League, he had graduated. Duron was there. And so it was one in which now I'm the veteran. I know what's going on and I know what I expect and when I should be receiving the ball and all of that. And Duron was one in which, he had a big arm also. And so it was good to have strong arm guys that could get you the ball. Um, on time and not have you, waiting. And because every time you wait, somebody's coming to get you. So let me get the ball quickly. And Duron was one to get it out there where I needed it.
All right. So, two questions. What was one of your memories playing that, caught was a difficult situation, and how did you get through it? And then what is a memory that you remembered that was just, one of your incredible memories that you have?
A difficult situation that I had to get through. I tell you, I didn't realize the rivalry between LSU and Tulane. And so I'm a Florida kid. I'm getting up, we're going up to Baton Rouge, and I think they were getting ready to play in the Sugar Bowl. And so one of the things that the little confectionery sugar cubes that you would drop in your coffee, well, apparently the whole stadium had those. And I remember Mac Brown saying before we left, he's like, make sure you put your helmet on and you keep it on through the tunnel until we get on the sideline. And you will keep it on then. I'm like, geez, why is he being so mean? I don't want my helmet on. It's heavy and all of that stuff. But then we came through for special teams right before the game starts. Special teams comes out, and you must have got pelted by at least 3,000 little cubes of sugar just hitting you on the helmet because that's where they were going. And it is an in-state rivalry, and so that's kind of what you do. And I'd never expected that. I was like, geez, this is way more than my high school. This is way more than anything that we've done in the Superdome. And so that was probably the most adversity that I thought, wow, we're not going to get any calls here because it's just a hostile environment. The second part of your question, the probably the best stuff was I think when I felt comfortable enough, and then we would play. I tried to have big games against the SEC or Florida State. And so I could say that I had 3 touchdowns in one game against Florida State. And I felt very good about going across and hugging Bobby Bowden and, saying, yeah, I wish I would have made that decision to be a Seminole because I could have done this. And he was like, I told you, but I was a 17-year-old kid that thought he knew everything,
Right.
opposed to this gentleman who has coached for half of his life and he had won some national championships. I just didn't listen. I don't know. Maybe my stubbornness kind of hurt me there. And then LSU games. I think every LSU game I played in, I either threw a touchdown or I caught a touchdown. I just I I reveled in the thought that this is the in-state rival. I think my junior year, I catch a touchdown with about a minute left, and we go up, and I'm thinking I could be the hero of this game. I caught the winning touchdown, and then they kicked it off to Harvey Williams, and Harvey runs it out to about the 40. It's like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And they proceeded to go down the field. I think they threw the ball maybe once. Didn't even get into a 2-minute drill. They just kind of ran the ball and some shuttle runs and things like that. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Are they going to go score? And they went. And there's a guy named Matt DeFrank who played kicker at LSU. And I played against him in high school. And he was the kicker. And he knocked it through. And it's like, man, if we could have just held them. But, that was one of those kind of bittersweet kind of things. Because I thought,
Right.
yeah, we're going to finally get them. We are going to beat them in the Superdome. But, fortune didn't have it that way. And that's kind of a metaphor for life. That's just how it
Right.
is.
Cool. Do you remember when the last thing, your last play in college? Do you remember what that feeling was like?
I don't remember the last one. I remember um, playing LSU in the Dome, last game of my college career. And we had a guy from Mobile, Alabama, Jerome Woods, and he comes in at quarterback and he throws me a deep ball, and I catch it and I maneuver through a bit of the defense and I go score. And generally, after I scored, I would just toss the ball to the referee. There wasn't any celebrations because I wanted to act like I had been there before. And I
Right.
planned on getting back there again. But this was probably in the fourth quarter, and I'm thinking, well, this might be the last one I score. So I got into the end zone. I point at the crowd. I take a bow. I take two bows, in fact. Um, and like on my highlight film, I could see this bow, and people are like, "Oh, you were a showboat. You were no, that was the very last one." Um, and it was a bittersweet thing too. So you're playing against LSU and you're doing well, and they're game planning. I think that's the ultimate compliment when you get another team to game plan for you. They're not just saying, well, he's over there, whatever, don't even worry about him. He's not going
Right.
to impact the game. They were bringing and shifting their coverages toward me. And in hindsight, I thought, wow, that was impactful because I made a difference to the point they needed to have more than one person watching me.
Excellent. So, at what point did you realize that? I mean, you talked about getting the 2 degrees. At what point did you realize that maybe you could continue playing as a professional football player?
Probably as I saw Mark Zeno, and then he went, and then Terrence, he went, and then we had some guys that came in with me, Lonnie Marks and Richard Harvey. These guys and Mitchell Price came in a little bit after, but he graduated with us. These guys ended up going, and they were getting drafted. And I'm like, I competed with them here. I know the next level, I could do the same. Um, in my case, I was an undrafted free agent, and so I went with the New Orleans Saints. And I thought, well, they know who I am because of my time at Tulane. But at that point, we had like 5 receivers, and they were keeping 6. 5 receivers were coming back, and they had a guy from Canada who they had already paid, pretty good money back then. So it was probably $200,000, and that was good money back then. So they brought him in, and so we had probably 11 receivers total, but they had 5 already returning, and they brought this one in. So at some point you look at it and you go, I might just be a camp body, and that is the guys that run around all through camp to keep the starters, which kind of hurt me because it was Eric Martin who played at LSU, and here I am being a camp body for him. And so we had some good ribbing with the Tulane and LSU rivalry, and so it made it harder, I guess. You want to impress and you want to try and put good things on film because you knew you probably won't be here, but you never know out of all the NFL teams who might be watching your film and where you might go next.
So how did that work out for you?
So I made it to our last cut, and I'm thinking, wow, we got one more cut. Just keep your head under under the radar, and maybe you're going to actually make this team. And then the guys come in and they call him the Turk. Here comes the Turk, and you're like, oh man, I waited all this time. You should have cut me early so I could have gone to another camp and possibly shown them. But I got cut, and I took it. I took it as a compliment that hey, I lasted this long, and I stayed in New Orleans, and so I'm still working out. And Eric Martin rolls his ankle, and so they're like, "Well, we need a receiver." Well, I'm local and I'm right there, and so they call me, and I come back, and I'm doing a little bit more with them, and I'm saying, okay, and this was, you got to keep in mind, this was before they had the practice squads and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they just were familiar because we had you in camp, but then we cut you. So I come back, and this probably happened 2 or 3 times throughout the season. You're going to come back and you're going to get a little bit, you get a little money, and hopefully, you can sustain us. And it was primarily just in practice. You're just in practice, giving reps to the quarterbacks and all that stuff. But the experience, I would not change that experience at all. I have kids today say, well, why didn't you stay in? I can easily and proudly say, I probably just wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough to be at that level or had that commitment, because when I got to New Orleans, I looked around and, I was 6'1", 185. And our kicker, Morton Anderson, was like 6'3", 215. And I'm
Wow.
like, this dude is way bigger than me, and I know what they do to the kicker. So what is going to happen to me? And I just thought at that point, the edge that I had, the edge that I always brought to football, you could do whatever. You're not going to hurt me. You can't do this. I'm going to be the one to be successful. I started to lose that. And once I started losing that kind of edge, I thought, man, this is when you get hurt. So I had no problem getting out of football and leaving it where it was.
So what was the next thing for you and how did you get there?
So I thought that I was leaving football where it was, and then New Orleans finds out that they are getting an arena football team, and so the New Orleans Knight comes in, and I'm like, I could do that. I could play some defense too, because it was like 7-on-7, except you couldn't substitute your quarterback, so you had to play offense and defense. So I was a linebacker on defense, and I thought, man, this is crazy, but it's fun, and you're getting a little money, and you're still active, and you're still doing the thing that you love. And so I played that a couple of years, and I just thought, I've got 2 degrees. I don't need to be out here with the chance of hurting a knee or getting hurt, because I was blessed enough, I guess, to play my whole high school and college without any major injuries. And so I thought, well, I guess the time is ticking on me, and I don't want it to happen, as I am out. I've got my degrees, but I'm not working. I'm still doing this football thing. And so, it was, I guess, bittersweet to go ahead and just let it go. But I did, and I moved on from there.
And how did you move on? Who did you talk to? What resources did you tap into?
So from Tulane, there were really, at that point, I don't think there were any resources, or I didn't know them. And I
Right.
think that was it. I don't think guys really said, hey, if you do this, if you go talk to that guy's hiring people. That really wasn't it. I had a friend from high school, a guy named John Cooper, rest in peace for him. He was out, he went to the Navy, and he was out in Seattle, Washington. And he calls me with all the questions that he already knew the answers to. Like, are you married? You got any kids? Is there a Fortune 500 job that you're working? No, no, and no. Why do you ask? He says, why don't you move out here? Why? Well, nothing's keeping you there. I had moved as a kid, so I wasn't bashful about moving. So I packed up all my little stuff, and I moved out to Seattle, where this is probably 25, 26 years old. And I'm like, I thought it was very nice. It was a culture shock to me. It was very different, but it was a nice city. And from there, I ended up doing an adjunct professorship with Western Washington University, and I became a school teacher. And so I had been a school teacher for probably 10 years. I had moved back to Florida. I went back on vacation, went to see the old middle school, which was the junior high, and then it had changed to middle school. And the principal says, so if you are working on your teaching degree, once you finish, you have a job here. Don't even question. You have a job here. And I thought, well, I can't pass that up. I get to come back to Florida and be back where I know everybody. And so, yeah, I came back and I taught for 10 years, 10, 11 years there. And I met my wife, and blessings are plentiful because she's a doctor, a neurologist. And so she says, the first year after we had gotten together, she's like, well, okay, so here's our problem with taxes. Um, we're going to have to pay more in taxes than you make as a school teacher. And that was just foreign to me because I had my school teacher money and that was it. And, maybe you get a little refund, but it really wasn't much. But then her doctor money came and just moved me up to a whole new tax bracket where now I got to pay money. They took my money and now I got to still pay their money. I really had problems with that. So I was off out of teaching for probably a decade. So I had
What?
taught for 10 years
Okay.
and then I was out of teaching for 10 years.
So what were you doing, Jerome?
I was staying out of trouble, and by my waistline, I was eating too much. That's what I could tell you. I was just kind of, I was the house husband, and I was my daughter Grace. She was doing travel softball and travel volleyball, and that's what I was. I was the dad there with the video camera. We're gonna catch all of it. I was the splicing guy. We're making highlight films for her. And I like to think that it all paid off. She ended up going to Georgia Tech to play volleyball. Um, she got there and she was injured, and I thought, come on, girl. But there was a time where before she got to Georgia Tech, I always tell her, listen, you are the best player around here, but you got to expand it because when you get to college, they go around the world. They don't just
Right.
stay here. And her experience was they had brought all the girls in and they really liked her. But there was one spot that was available and they hadn't filled it yet. And then her coach, who was from Brazil, ended up filling it with a girl who is like 6'6" from Brazil, who played in Germany, who played the international circuit. And when she got to Georgia Tech, she was in front of Grace and she was ACC Player of the Year, probably 4 years running. So I thought, well, sweetie, you're going to have to either play a new position because I don't think you could beat her out. And she ended up hurting her toe. She had a medical retirement, so she didn't end up playing a whole lot. But probably the proudest thing is that she graduated from Georgia Tech. That was one of the proud papa moments. She's a graduate of Georgia Tech University.
That's incredible. So I know you started coaching. So what was that like bringing the coaching side to students? How did that work out for you?
Initially, I was coaching in Florida at the middle school that I was teaching at. It was just an easy transition. You're a teacher, and then you're the coach. And so, in a lot of schools, even in this day and age, they need coaches in the school because the guys that are playing the sports kind of will respect you a bit more and will act better in school than if I'm going to tell your coach if you don't start acting right. Okay, I'm gonna straighten up because I gotta run or I gotta do up downs or whatever. So that was an easy transition for me. I did that in Florida. I was a head coach of the football team, head coach of the basketball team. Um, Felt good about it, and I thought there's some information that I have that I can probably give. And once, as I said, my wife came along, and I was like, well, now I'm not coaching, now I'm not doing anything, and we ended up moving to Owensboro, Kentucky, where I'm presently at. And so, as they entertain doctors to potentially come to their hospitals, they also have their spouse. What do they do? And so I went to Owensboro High School, and our head coach Jay Fallon took me around, and it's like, This school is really dedicated to the arts, but we have a great football team. We have great tradition. We're one of the 5 schools in the state of Kentucky that have this many victories and whatnot. And so I was like, wow, this seems pretty good. And I thought, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And they brought me on staff, and I'm currently the assistant wide receiver coach. So still here, still trying to get things done.
That's really cool. Um, so you've been doing all of that.
Mhm.
Do you get back to Tulane and do you get the opportunity to kind of talk to the student athletes? Like, what type of things would you like to tell them?
I am coming back this year to the homecoming against Temple. I will be there with wife and kid in tow, so we'll be there. And I've gone to some of the games, but I don't think it's my place because definitely I am an alum, but I am way alum. I'm not the Darnell Mooney's that is playing with Chicago Bears. I'm not that kind of alum. But, I will talk to the guys, and I have. It's just a matter of, you've got to know your worth. And so, in the event, like in my case with Terrence and I, you know, anything he did, it was cheered, and everybody loved that. And then the things that I did, it was like, eh. And so I'm thinking, well, I got to be my own advocate. So that's what I would tell kids: is be your own advocate. If nobody is cheering for you, if you throw a good ball, say, good ball, man. Good ball. I like that. Or that's a good ball there. Be your advocate. And it's showing other people this is what I expect. I want people to give me my, as they say, give me my flowers while I'm here. So if I'm doing well, I want you to let me know.
Cool. Do you have any thoughts about NIL, how it's impacted recruiting? I know you've been a coach. What type of things have you seen impacted by NIL and the transfer portal?
Well, I'll say this: when I was in college, and that sounds like the old guy talking, but when I was there, you weren't getting any money. That was it, and a deal because of your name, that ain't happening. You'd be glad that you got this scholarship, and a lot of people didn't realize that your scholarship was for 1 year. You had to renew that. It wasn't a 4-year scholarship. You had to renew that thing every year, and so you had to come to the table with what you've done. What did you bring to this university? So the whole getting in trouble and bad grades and all that stuff, those were deterrents that I saw a number of guys not be returned. We don't need your kind on our campus. And so you just had to do it. If you wanted to be here, you had to maintain the level in which they wanted you to be at. And so I thought that was fine. And now, I start watching, and the NIL guys are just leaving every year. It's like, and I'm not talking like from a mid-major or a small university to the mate. We got guys that are going from Ohio State. Nope, I'm going to go to Georgia now, and then from there, I'm going to go to Penn State. And these are major D1 colleges that you are just. I don't understand how you at some point you have to stay. You have to grow roots in a place instead of, well, first sight of adversity, I got to go. And that's kind of how I see it. I like and I support like the Georgia Bulldogs. And Georgia loses guys left and right all the time. We lost a guy who was on the national championship team, and you didn't come back for the next year. He went to Texas and starred at Texas. And so I don't know if it is the money, because a lot of, as they get to the league, a lot of guys say, well, I'm going to pay off my mom's house. I'm going to do all this with the money. And so now the game, I think college game especially, it's become more of a minor league for the professionals because these guys are getting paid. And I think it'd be very hard as a coach to try to coach or teach a kid who's making more money than you. That just seems very hard to do unless you are just straight disciplined and this is what we're going to do. And a lot of times the kids this day and age aren't really into you screaming and yelling at them. So the hard line discipline is a thing of the past, I think. And so, guys, maybe that's the case, and that's why people, well, I don't really like being over there. Well, in life, you're not going to like everything that you got to do. And that's probably one of the lessons that people need to know instead of, I'm just going to jump in the portal. Because I think what's lost in that portal is, so let's say you've got 500 people that are in the portal. Well, there's only going to be like 50 of them named that gets out of the portal. And so now you done dropped out of school, and that school that's back there is probably responsible for you. And so, tuck tail between your legs because now I didn't want to be with y'all and now I got to go back to you. That's hard. A lot of times when people get in that portal, they go down a level. They got to
Right.
go to a smaller school because they thought they were better than what they were. And I don't know, I don't think you have an agent, and so you don't have somebody, an advocate for you. You are just doing all this on your own, and you think, and most athletes do, they think they're better than what they are. And as I've gotten older, oh, I'm way better now than I ever was in my mind. In my mind, now my old body says, you can't run as fast as you thought you could. You can't do this. And so as I'm with these high school kids, I'm trying to keep up and throw and catch balls and all that stuff. And they don't see me afterward, where it's like a little bit of soreness and all of that. But you present that facade to them that no, I'm it. I can do this.
Gotcha. Have you had any experience with any student athletes that may have had issues in the portal or may have had not so good experiences with NIL, or you just haven't been in a position where you experienced anything like that?
What we, in fact, at Owensboro, we had our starting quarterback was like a 4-star recruit. His name is Gavin Wimsett. Gavin he ended up his senior year, he played 4 games, and then he left us and he went to Rutgers. So he goes from Owensboro to Kentucky to Piscataway, New Jersey to play for Rutgers. And I think he's the only kid that has played both high school and college in the same year. Because again, he started four games for us, and then he went there, and they had him playing spot position sometimes. He's still the quarterback, but it wasn't he was starting. He was still getting some playing time. And this past, probably within the last 2 to 3 weeks, he had jumped into the portal, and now he is coming back to the University of Kentucky. So he will be at UK this year. So he's been the only guy that we've had jumped into the portal that I had been around. There's other guys that are, but I wasn't coaching at that point. But Gavin was the first quarterback that was around when I got here. And this guy, I thought Terrence had an arm. Good Lord, this guy, he can throw. He can probably flat foot throw it 80 yards. I mean, it's
Wow.
so. I remember very distinctly the very first game that we had. You know how you go out for pregame and all that stuff, and he throws a ball in the pregame and breaks a guy's finger. And he comes out, and his finger is sticking the wrong way. And he's like, "Coach, I think I need to get some tape." And he's like, "That's broke." And so I continually would talk to Gavin about, it's great that you've got a strong arm, but if they can't catch it, you're doing yourself a disservice because it's going to ricochet and possibly get picked off. So I tried to work with him a little bit, but he was pretty set that he had the arm and he was going to show it off, and that was his talent. I mean, he could run if he needed to, but he would rather. I guess I saw a little bit of me in him. He would much rather stand in that pocket and throw the ball as opposed to run, and so he was always deemed as the dual threat quarterback. But I don't think Gavin really wanted to run a whole lot. He just wanted to throw that ball and show off his arm, and it's great, and it got him to college at Rutgers, and it got him a return trip to UK. So hopefully this year, next year, we'll see Gavin Wimsett playing at the University of Kentucky.
Awesome. That'll be great. So, Jerome, I've been having fun talking to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And now I have a few questions I want to ask just to, kind of get to know Jerome a little bit better.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Okay.
Okay. What is something on your bucket list?
A bucket list for me. Ooh, I think going like I've when I was with the Saints, I had to get my passport, and I went over. We played in London. I would like to travel abroad more. The only stickler with that is the way relations are in the United States now with the rest of the world. I don't want to get caught up in a foreign land. So I have that on a bucket list, but I'm a little tentative about actually doing it.
Okay. Would you rather bike or hike?
Bike.
Would you prefer book smarts or street smarts?
Ooh, that's a great question. Now, keep in mind, I came back to the class. And so I am a ninth grade, basically a freshman science teacher right now. And so the book smarts versus, wow. I like common sense. I really do. Because that can kind of get you through. But definitely, I got to go with the book smarts. I really do. I think you can learn common sense. But if you don't have just basic
Do
book
you think you
smarts,
can learn common sense?
here's my
I'm
example.
just asking. I'm
No,
asking as a
here's my
friend.
example. I had to learn common sense. Don't go down New Orleans by yourself at 18, at 17, and you don't
At
know
any
anything.
age.
You know
At
what I
any
mean? Don't go
age.
down there by yourself. So I had to learn that. And that wasn't common sense to me because wherever you're from, if you're from a small town, oh, it's great to walk around and that's what you could do. But then you hop to a big city and you get caught up. See, so you learn that. And so, yeah, I think the book smarts, if you ain't got them, and I've been around, and it's like, how do you not know this? Well, I wasn't taught that. Well, and definitely in my case, I think, you probably were taught it. You were probably on your phone, or you probably were distracted, so you didn't listen. And I think that would be a big issue with high school kids at this age.
Do you want to score or you want to defend?
Oh, I'm scoring. I mean, there's some defense going on, but hey, look, I got to
Work or work out?
work. I would
Would you
rather work. Yeah,
would you rather sing karaoke or go to a movie?
I got to go to the movie. You ain't heard me sing. It ain't
What?
bad. It ain't bad, but it ain't
What's
good
your
either.
go-to karaoke song?
See, you making the assumption that I do karaoke.
What's your
Uh,
go-to karaoke song? I know you have one.
my go-to karaoke song would probably be, and my wife will like this, "No Diggity" by Blackstreet. That's what I'm gonna go with. No diggity, no doubt.
Board games or video games?
Oh, I always tell my wife I'm a gamer. I'm a gamer, but it's technology, so I'm gonna go with the board game because that's easy.
Planning or spontaneity?
Oh, you got to be well. I'm thinking because and I'm always putting it back to my relationship with my wife, and it's like, could you be spontaneous? Yes, we can be. But I like a plan, and I'm like the old A team. I love it when a plan comes together. So when that plan is executed, and it's like with us, it's okay. We're leaving at 8 o'clock, and 7:45 we get in the car. That plan is executed. I love that part. But most of the time we leave at like 12.
What's a television show you used to watch in college and what's something you binge on now?
I could tell you now, something I used to watch in college was the A Team
Okay.
with Mr. T. And I don't know if I binge watch it, but if it's on, I'm gonna watch either Matlock, and I'm showing my age. I'm gonna watch Matlock. I'm gonna watch In the Heat of the Night. Oh man, don't if there's a marathon, I might spend about 3 4 hours just watch all the stuff that you'd already seen, and you look at it, and I think everybody on that screen is dead right now, but I'm still watching the show, so they had an impact on me.
What's the best concert you've been to?
Best concert. Ooh. I used to go, to they have those festivals in New Orleans, and there were some reggae concerts that I really liked. And then I would probably say in my older age, it's been Cool in the Gang.
Okay.
I went to see Cool in the Gang, and I think they had New Edition. New Edition was there with Bobby Brown, and
Okay.
boy, it was just one of those things where Bobby Brown would sing a song, and then he would disappear. You wouldn't see him. He'd be off. He'd be getting some oxygen off stage, and then he'd come back 2 songs later, and he'd do his little dancing, and he'd disappear again. So those things that you used to listen to, and then you see them as older people, and it's like, yeah, he running out of breath right now. He got to get some air. He need to be over there with that oxygen. So I like those ones.
What are some of the things your teachers used to say about you on your report cards in elementary and middle school?
Talk too much. That was probably, this boy talks too much. And it wasn't like I'm just talking to get attention. I thought my thoughts. For me, I thought I'm putting out some nuggets here. These people are going to learn something today from me, and it was probably a whole bunch of hogwash. But I thought I was being smart. I thought I knew what I was doing. A lot of times, sometimes, as I tell kids, the quiet one is always the one that possibly knows. And if you don't know, nobody knows that you don't know because you're quiet. Once you
Right,
open up your mouth, you let everybody know if you're smart or not.
right. Would you rather go back in time and meet with your ancestors or go forward in time and meet with your descendants?
Ooh, I'm going back in time. I'm going back just because I'm a firm believer. If you don't know where you came from, you definitely don't know where you're going. So I would love to meet with my ancestors and talk shop with them.
And if they were writing a movie about you, what would the title be and who would you like to play the lead character?
Ooh, oh. I would say the title of it would be Survivor. That sounds good. And again, my wife would like that. And probably the lead, my guy would be LL Cool J because she
Oh
always says I can look. You
gosh.
kind of look like him. It's like, nah, I don't even think so. But it's what she says.
Okay, Jerome, that was great. Do you have anything you want to add? Anything, we didn't cover that you might want to get to?
Yeah, what's on your bucket list?
What's on my bucket
Uh
list?
huh.
Well, Jerome, let me say this. I haven't been to Hawaii yet, so I may go ahead and say that.
Okay.
But you know me. If something is on the list, I'm gonna try to figure out a way to get
Yeah,
to it.
yeah. That's why I asked.
I pretty much hit everything on the list.
That's
So
why I
now
asked because I
I'm
figured you've
kind of
already
in a
been.
little extra. I'm kind of doing a little extra, but
Uh
the
huh.
stuff that I really wanted to do, I have probably done it already.
Okay. All right.
I see you trying to turn the tide.
Well, I'm just trying. Well, because I'm talking to this inductee into the Hall of Fame now, and
Oh
so
my
I
God.
definitely I didn't know I was around royalty. You and
You did
Zeno,
not
and
know I was royalty.
I did not know.
I am so shocked. What did you think I was?
I thought you was a very quiet little young lady at Tulane. I
I
couldn't hear because
was.
she was
I
always
was.
whispering, like, you have to
I
speak up.
did.
And I
I
never did tell
did.
you that in college. I never said speak up. But then I
Yes,
got
you
older,
did.
and I was
Yes,
like,
you
girl,
did.
did I? Did
Yes.
I?
I can mention some rude moments that we had, but I just
Yeah,
took it on the
keep that
shoulder and
under
brushed it
wraps.
off. I just
So,
brushed it off,
and
you
then
know.
when I come back, I always get spend some time with you, Melvin Ferdinand,
Exactly.
and so I just
Exactly.
thought these are just regular people. These my people. They just regular.
We are your people.
But then
But
I started looking at
none of us are regular.
these Hall of Fame inductees and like, wow, wow, okay, okay. I knew she could ball a bit, but come on, Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
we had some ball times in the gym, right?
Yeah, we had. You and I have. And, I thought, well, she ain't going to beat me because I'm a guy. And walked out of there with your tail tucked like, man, come on. She
You
just
know,
got
people
lucky. She got lucky that time.
all the time, all the time.
She got lucky that time.
You know. Yeah, that's cool. So is that it? Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm doing good. Doing good. Like
Okay,
I said,
good.
I'm looking forward to homecoming this year. Like I said,
Okay.
I'll be down there with my wife and kid, and looking forward to meeting people because again, we got a new coaching staff. We got
Whole
new
new
guys, and
coaching
it's like,
staff.
come on.
Where everybody's really excited about him. He's done a real good job with recruiting. This is one of the best recruiting classes that they've had. So they're excited
Now, was
that
he a coach at Tulane before?
It's a while ago, yes.
Okay, okay. So
Yes. Hmm.
he knows what's going on. Okay, so yeah, I'd like to get down there and meet them and
We have the new athletic director who happens to be the first African American athletic director as well.
yeah, I saw that brother and I thought I got to talk to him too. Not that I got
Hmm.
much to say, but I just want to talk. You know,
Well,
I got no problem doing that.
he seems to be very receptive to, meeting alum and, just he's he I found him to be pretty pleasant
Okay,
and
okay.
welcoming.
And where is he coming
Well,
from?
he was at, I want to say, Northern Iowa,
Okay.
but he actually is from Baton Rouge.
Oh, local guy.
Um,
All right.
yeah, and he played in the SEC. I don't want to say which school because I'm not
Sure.
quite sure, but he played in the SEC. So I think he has because he's a former player, I think that leads to a certain attitude about former players,
Mm-hmm.
alumni.
Sure.
But hopefully we want to get behind them. We want to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
behind
definitely
them,
so.
and I think that it's a excellent time at Tulane right now.
Yeah, it seems that way, and I saw that. In fact, I was looking. They had a walk off home run last night to win the ACC, and
Yeah, baseball won
I
the
was like, wow, look at baseball's coming through
right,
now. So yeah,
right.
it's exciting at Tulane now. I think.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's just really exciting times. Everybody's excited.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, they'll keep elevating the
Yeah,
program.
without a doubt, and it's again, I hear the echoing words of my professor. This is an academic university, so be glad that we're doing sports, but that's not going to be our foundation. And so,
Right,
if the kids are, and I say kids, they're probably in their 20s. If these guys are you know, going forth with that, then they're going to be okay. Because as I tell kids, sports is only going to last as long as it wants you.
right,
Nobody says, "Oh, I gave up the game in my prime." They say Barry Sanders did. He probably did, but for the rest of the people, no. The sport gives you a sign you're not
right,
good enough anymore, and so it
right.
passes you by. You don't pass it. So hopefully everybody will understand that.
Great. Well, good. I had fun today, Jerome.
Yes, ma'am. It's always fun talking with you.
Yes, definitely. So we're gonna have to get together soon, and
Yes, ma'am.
maybe we'll do another video. We'll do a part two.
Well, I'm here. You know why? As Prime say, I ain't hard to find.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, and I think everything was awesome. So
Sure.
thank you
Thank
again.
you. Yes.
Tell Miss Laurie I said hi.
You know I will, because she's probably standing at the door. All
All right. Good
right,
night.
we'll see you.